Hey, Dooberteers, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited today for our guest, Kristen Hassen. She's somebody that's a badass in the industry. I'm proud to call her a friend of mine. And I learned something new about Kristen today is that she's the only shelter director. She's worked in lots of different shelters, but personally, as the executive director, took three different organizations to a 90+% live release rate. And these are not small shelters. Some of these, Kristen, had what, 20,000 plus intake a year. So quite the feat. Super excited to have you. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thanks, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
I'm really excited to talk to you. So tell us a little bit about you and tell us what you're doing now, and let's go from there.
Gosh, I got into animal welfare in 1999, but back then it was really pretty awful field to be in, and most of what we did was get animals into the building and euthanize them. I worked in a shelter in Ohio where the euthanasia rate was like 70 to 80%. So I left the field quickly. I didn't come back until 2012. And so in the interim, did a whole bunch of other things, but came back into the field at a time when there was a much more of an appetite for life saving, and worked in the Fairfax County Animal Shelter, Austin Animal Center, and Pima Animal Care Center in Tucson, Arizona over the span of about 10 years. And just found that it was really exciting, especially given my early experience, which was really pretty traumatic, to get to go in and bring shelters to a much higher live release rate was really cathartic. It was like healing for me to get to do that.
Nice. Now, what's your background, Kristen? I mean, what schooling and all that other stuff that led you to this point?
I went to Ohio State University, the Ohio State University, and
Say it right.
I have an undergraduate degree in what was then women's studies, because I don't even think exists at this point, and a graduate degree in comparative studies, which is like interdisciplinary studies. It's just learning. I always have been really interested in learning about systems and how to fix them. And so I taught at Ohio State for several years, and I spent a number of years in equine welfare and the horse industry before getting into cat and dog welfare.
So, Kristen, take us back to 1999. What inspired you to want to go into animal sheltering then? Was there a particular animal, a situation? Were you a volunteer?
Well, you know what, this gets a little heady, but when I was younger, I was a survivor of childhood abuse. And as a child, my animals were my only witness. Like, they were the only ones that saw what happened to me. They were the only ones that they had my back and took care of me. And I think I credit them to my survival. And I am just forever grateful that they were there. And I have throughout my career and my adult life been really pulled into helping bring visibility to animals, because I think their best chance of being saved is being seen. And I got into animal welfare. I was 19 or 20 at the time, and I got into animal welfare because I wanted to help save their lives. And it was really, traumatic isn't even the right word. It was horrifying to see what was happening to them when they would come into this institution to get help and be killed. It was just terrible. I only lasted about 6 months. I had a nervous breakdown. I don't think we called it that then, but I had a nervous breakdown when I walked in on them killing my favorite dog. And I I didn't go back to the field until many years later when I had a chance to actually do the work I wanted to do. So it's always felt like a calling.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, then obviously a traumatic experience, like you said, but then you came back, right? And then you ended up in a leadership position.
Yeah, I was working in the I was working for the Fairfax County Parks, and my boss at the time, Tawny Hammond, who's still working in the field, was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go run the animal shelter. I'm leaving." And she was such a great boss. I did not want her to leave. And she was like, "Do you want to come work there?" And I was like, "Hell no. Good luck. It's gonna destroy your soul." And I told her my story, and she's like, "No, no, no. Come, if you come work there, like, you can actually help save lives. And we're not going to do things that way anymore." And so that's how I got back into the field. And she kept true to her promise. And I think it just, after that, I was like, oh, this is easy. Like, this is actually much easier than we think it is. We just tell ourselves it's not. And that's been really what's carried me this whole time. It's just like, if we decide we're going to save them, we just do that. and don't fall back on, I think, the old ways the system operated. The system was built to be a catch and kill system. It was built for bringing animals in and but we don't have to do it that way. We just have to make different choices.
Yeah, no, I think that's well stated. I mean, things have changed a lot, right? We've learned a lot. We've got new technologies, new procedures. We have the means to do something different. So when you were working at those different organizations, which you got to 90+% live release rate, which is absolutely impressive. I mean, where did you begin? When you started day one, it clearly wasn't at 90%, and you came in and said, no, we're going to do this differently. I mean, walk us through how that worked.
Well, I think like looking back in my young self, having a good boss was key. And I feel so badly for young people coming up in this field that don't have a strong mentor, because I really, having Tani there to say like yes and to have my back was 100% why I was able to do what I did at the time. And I think that like you see people, I meet now that I mentor so many young people coming up in the field, and I mean young professionally, you can see that if they have a boss that empowers them, they're like, they want to save lives. They want to do better. You just start picking up groups of animals and saving them. You say like, oh, we're not going to euthanize cats for being shy anymore. We're not going to euthanize kittens for having ringworm, or dogs for being stressed out in their kennel, and having that support at the top is critical. So I think that was really key for me. But what we really did was just to start fighting the old ways of doing things. And most organizations, I'm a consultant now, and I go into new organizations all the time, and I work in, I think, what are many of the toughest animal shelters in America. And most of my work is getting people just to get out of the old way of doing things. And sometimes that's a big fight. People get pretty invested in, we're going to hold every medical animal in the back and the public can't see them. Well, that's a sure bet. Some of those animals are going to get sick and die. Some are going to decline and they have to be euthanized. Getting them to say yes to doing things differently is the hardest work I do. It's the hardest work I did then. It's just changing people. It's nothing about the animals. The animals are wonderful. They're all cats and dogs are the same wherever you go. There's no unique situation with anyone's animals. I hear that all the time, but it's really getting the people out of the way and getting them to try something different.
How do you inspire a team to want to do that? Because like you said, it's, well, we've always done it this way, Kristen, and that's never going to work, Kristen, and all these things. I mean, how do you walk into them and say, guys, we're no longer going to euthanize now shy cats, period. That's it. It's a statement, not a question. And how do you inspire them to want to be a part of that vision?
It depends, because in some organizations, there is that one person there or those couple of people there who are really entrenched. They have a lot of power. They control the culture of the organization, and they are not really willing to do things differently. And sometimes it's about getting those people on your side, and sometimes it's about getting them out of the way. And I think that leaders have to pick, like, have to give those folks an opportunity to either get on board or get out of the way. That can be really challenging because they hold it up for everyone else. When you're coming into the field, we really suffer from a lack of standards, but we don't suffer from a lack of research and data. If you ground in the research and data, everything I say is going to be true because all my work is based off of research and data. If you ground in fallacies of thinking and your perception of risk, and we tried that and it didn't work, that's a set of choices that people are making that they have to change. And so I try to get people to think about what do we know? And Dr. Emily Weiss says, I think it's what do we know and how do we know it? And really get people to ask themselves that question. And as if they do, everything kind of starts to fall apart. All their old ways of doing things kind of start to fall apart. So it really depends on the team. A lot of teams, it's just organizing people to change some practices we all work in isolation. We often never talk to other shelters. So
Sure.
helping people connect to best practices, shelters that are doing it better. Lifeline Animal Project, one of my favorite organizations in the country, sent like 12,000 animals to foster last year. And it's like, they don't have any money. They don't have any resources. They're in the Atlanta metro area and they do it. Like, you can do it too. Like, this is just about will. It's not about having all the money in the world, or all the staff in the world. It's just a matter of wanting to do it.
it's set in that direction. It's having that vision. It's what I really like about the way you talk about this too, Kristen, is that you're doing it from a place of respect, right? This is what the data shows. I'm not telling you you're an idiot. I'm just telling you this is what the data shows, right? So let's try this. Let's see if we can have these same kind of results. And I feel like that level of respect really shows your leadership style, because a lot of times people just say, do it because I said so. And then you don't get the buy-in from the team.
Yeah, you often don't get the buy-in anyway, and that's the hard part about not having standards. I really love the ASD guidelines, the Association for Shelter Veterinary Guidelines. We need those desperately for operations because we just need one place where all of this is pulled together for shelters to know, like, this is the standardized ground. And unfortunately, it's like anyone's idea or belief goes at this point, and that's a huge problem. This is not an individual shoulder problem; it's a system problem that we need a solution for. So, as a consultant, I'm a little bit limited until we build that database of best practices grounded in research and data, and say, no, this is what you do, because there's actually support for this peer-reviewed research that says this is a good idea. Until we have that, I think it's going to be a lot more arguing than is necessary and a lot of distraction from the real work we need to be doing.
Yeah, things have changed a lot. We've learned a lot. I mean, obviously technology, but then just all of the having access to all the data, like you said, and more organizations reporting. And now we can look at things at a macro level and actually see like what things are actually making and making the lives of animals better. So as you know, I'm a data geek like you are, right? The data doesn't lie. The data can be interpreted, but the data is the data. And what can we take from that? And then how do we change our trajectory and what we're going to do?
Yeah, I think there's better ways we can look at the data too. We're all at the mercy of the animal shelter software systems, and the software systems are largely a pretty significant problem and barrier. I work with Shelter Love, which is one of the shelter software systems, because they actually acknowledge that the way we think about data, it can be a real problem, and the way we collect data, and they're trying to build like additional they're trying to think differently about the problem and always innovate. But a lot of the companies that we rely on have been pretty much the same for decades now. And those systems were really not built to create change. They were built to say, does this animal that is in front of me match this animal that's on paper?
Hmm.
That is really different than a system that's going to say, like, okay, how are we going to look at this data and see that 80% of your animals are in an unavailable status, which means they're not available to the public. The statuses, I'm obsessed with statuses. We never talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
They're such a key data point. If 80% of your animals are unavailable or rescue only or some other, excuse my language, statuses make me really mad. If that is true, then all the other things we're looking at don't really matter. If you have a significant problem in your system like that, and a lot of these systems have significant problems that they're not even looking at. So part of what I do is help shelters look at those significant issues that are like, that's what's keeping your animals, and that's the number you need to focus on.
Yeah, those things can really make a huge difference. Like you said, if 80% of your animals aren't available, you're limiting. That's like going to Walmart and saying, you can't have 80% of the products in here, right? But I need this. Yeah, but sorry, we don't have that. It's not available. When you look at it, yes, they're living sentient beings, but they're still inventory, if you will, within an animal shelter. And if they're not available, you're kind of turning people off that they don't have the choice that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So, Kristen, take us back. If you were to go back on a time machine to your younger self and give her some advice, what would you tell her?
I think animal shelter professionals need to upskill more quickly in things not related to animal sheltering. I was just sending a colleague had asked for management trainings, and I was kind of looking currently about what's available. And there's so much free education or low cost education online. Harvard Business School, you can go take a management course, $1,500. Coursera, a lot even cheaper. Management training from the best in the country. Like, all of that's available to us now. And yet we're all working in crisis mode. We're not upskilling. We simply don't have the skills and the education to move up in the field effectively. And so you see a lot of young people with a lot of potential getting promoted to a position that they just don't quite have the professional skill set for, and then leaving the field. So I think that I had the benefit of having a lot of that through because I did really have a totally different career in between my two shelter stints. That becomes really important. And I think we need professional degree programs that are about animal shelter management. We don't have that nationally now. Like we just don't have a that you can't say I'm gonna go to Ohio State and I'm gonna study animal welfare management. And there's enough animal shelters in this country and enough rescues that it isn't crazy to think about that.
That's an interesting point. I've never thought of that, but you're right. I mean, there's so many different courses and things available. Somebody could cobble something together, but we could also curate something that says, look, this is what the skills are needed to be an executive director in an animal shelter, and put some course together for them that says, here's how you can learn and demonstrate, because it's like one of those industries that's kind of often looked over or forgotten about because it's behind the scenes. And I think having that skill, some of the best leaders, right, yourself included, it's like you proved it. You went from this one to this one to this one, three completely different communities, and you still were able to get to a 90+% live release rate. So, there's a skill, there's knowledge that goes into this that we've got to figure out how to impart this on the next generation of leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the reason I've been successful is I focused on like the state versus anything else. So like we focused on moving as quickly as possible animals through the system, regardless of outcome. Like if they were going to euthanasia, they were moving to euthanasia quickly. And I think that that's a problem that we're treating animals in shelters like horses in a boarding stable. We're not treating an animal shelter as a crisis stopping point. And it was my education outside of animal welfare and working in other industries that taught me to think like that. And I think like the more exposure we can get to how other fields do things, I'm currently obsessed with hospital bed management. Because if we thought about animal shelters much more like that, we would move much more quickly. And it's a very small percentage of animals that get stuck in the system, but once they do, they bottleneck the entire thing. And I think that like the more you can look outside of animal welfare to industries that are doing it better and have more resources. This industry has no money. There's no federal funding to animal welfare, very little state funding. We are broke, we're under resourced, but we can learn from other industries that have more resources about how they're managing. And I think take a lot of lessons from them. So I hope to see in my lifetime a real degree program at a Research One university, a community college degree that actually help people have the meaningful skill sets they need. And I think it's going to happen. I think there's enough interest in it. And this field pays great relative to other fields. Nobody wants these shelter director jobs. They're sitting vacant for sometimes years at a time. Like it's wide open where people should be getting into this field, but they do need the skills to be successful in it. Otherwise, you're just leaving saying like I did in 1999, I'm never coming back to this. This is terrible.
Well, I'm glad you did come back, because I think you've made a huge impact. And I think, as you and I talked about before we started recording, I mean, I think things are very different than they were 10 or 20 years ago. We have to just keep looking at the positives and how do we keep moving down that path. And I think the idea of a degree, a certification, a degree, that educational backing would just go so far to help people in this industry. So I'm a big fan, and I'll support you in any way to make that happen. So Kristen, as we kind of come towards the end here, I always like to do a lightning round where we can learn a little bit more about you as a person. So just some fun questions and that as we wrap things up. So you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you prefer kitten purrs or puppy breath?
Both.
Okay, that's a good way to answer the question. Are you a early bird or a late night owl?
Early.
Do you have a particular song that's like your go-to song when you're looking to get pumped up?
Right now it's Ventura Highway. I don't know why.
Okay. No, I love it.
I'm old.
That's okay.
I live in Ventura, so
that's your jam.
Yeah, it's my song right now.
What do you like to do to decompress after a hard day?
Be outside.
Okay. Just being outside in nature and
always, yes. Anytime I'm outside, I'm happy.
Nice. I love that. And then I guess my last question, Kristen, what do you want your legacy to be?
that is a great question and a really important one. And I think that if I'm realistic about it, I want my legacy to be that we moved from a shelter centric model to a foster centric model. That break happened in child welfare in the early 1900s with a executive order at the federal level from President Teddy Roosevelt. I think we need to stop. I think that this constant reliance on mass institutionalization of animals is unnecessary and it should end. And I think we're going to have to approach that nationally. I think we could be approaching that internationally. I speak at international conferences on why people need to stop building shelters. And so I hope that when I'm done with this work, that more animals are housed in foster than are housed in institutions.
I love that. I think that's a great goal and one that I'm a big fan of. To me, unless they're medically or behaviorally, specifically challenged, a home environment, we know all the data shows us, right, that the animals thrive better. They're less stressed. There's less disease. They get adopted faster, like for all those reasons. So I'm definitely a big fan of that vision and legacy. So I'm going to help you get there.
And I have one last thing to say, which is anyone listening that is not as far along in their career as we are, I want to say that if you are working in an environment where you have to go home and drink, use drugs, if you have to have the coping mechanisms that will kill you to survive your job, you should leave. And there are so many animal welfare organizations that need people. There are tons of them that don't make people feel that way. There are lots of good organizations. So for folks sitting in these orgs that are killing them, I don't want to see any more of our people really living in a way that will kill them just to survive the work. It's not necessary. So just think about that. I really do believe, I'm sober. I take good care of myself, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't focusing on my own well-being first. I don't think I could have survived the challenge of seeing countless animals that we can't immediately help that are sitting in our shelters. It's a lot of trauma exposure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You have to take care of you first. And, like you said, if somebody's watching, listening, and they're in a toxic environment, you don't need to be there, right? Reach out to you, reach out to me, reach out to someone else. We'll help you to find.
Totally.
There's plenty of organizations out there that just have the right leadership, the right style for you to do this life-saving work. And if somebody's passionate about wanting to do this, let's help find them the right home.
Yeah, people can find me at outcomesforpets.com, and my contact information is on the website. I also write a lot on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I try to meet 5 shelter workers a week. So reach out. I'm always happy to talk to folks about their career and help them along.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm really glad you came back to the field. I love working with you, and let's see what we can do together. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Chris.